Hey guys, tonight we're going to step away from the solid ground beneath your feet and drift into the heart of the golden age of piracy. But we're not here for the swashbuckling adventures you see in the movies, with swinging ropes and chests overflowing with gold. No, we're here for the grim, disgusting, and desperate reality of what it was really like. Specifically, we're going to uncover the truth about the food, or lack thereof, and why the romantic image of a pirate feast is a total fantasy. It's a journey into a world of starvation, rot, and things you wouldn't wish on your worst enemy. Honestly, you probably wouldn't survive the first month. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments what city you're in and what time it is for you. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The year is somewhere around 1716th. The air in this Caribbean port town hangs thick and heavy, a soupy mix of tar, salt water, rotting fish, and cheap rum. Your shoes, thin and worn, sink slightly into the mud and grime of the unpaved street. This is your world. A world of back-breaking labor for pennies, or worse, the crushing discipline of a merchant ship or the Royal Navy. You've seen men flogged for looking at a captain the wrong way, their backs turned into a bloody ruin. You've seen sailors' pay disappear into the pockets of corrupt purseress, leaving them with nothing after months of risking their lives at sea. You've eaten the food they serve, worm meat and biscuits and salted meat so hard it could break a tooth. Life on land isn't much better. It's a cycle of poverty and hopelessness, with the gallows or the workhouse looming as the only certainties. So you find yourself in a dimly lit tavern. The low-beamed ceiling is dark with smoke, and the air buzzes with hushed, dangerous conversations. In the corner, a man with a weathered face and a missing ear is talking. HES not recruiting in the king's name. HES just talking. He speaks of a different life. A life at sea, yes, but not under the lash of a tyrant. He talks about the account, a brotherhood. He speaks of a ship where every man has a vote, a ship where the captain is elected and can be removed by a majority. He talks about a code, articles that every man agrees to, setting out the rules for discipline and, most importantly, the division of plunder. No work, no prey, a fair share for every man who risks his life. This is the siren song of piracy. It's not the promise of limitless gold that truly hooks you, not at first. It's the promise of freedom. The promise of being treated like a man, not an animal. The promise of having a say in your own fate. It's a stark contrast to the life you know, where your destiny is in the hands of wealthy merchants or aristocratic officers who see you as utterly disposable. Here's a little detail they don't show you in the movies before joining a pirate crew. You'd often be presented with their articles or written contract of sorts. You'd make your mark or sign your name, swearing an oath on a Bible, a hatchet, or even a human skull, binding yourself to this new democratic and incredibly dangerous society. You listen, and the choice crystallizes in your mind. Is it a choice between a good life and a bad one? No. It's a choice between two very bad lives. But one of them offers you a sliver of dignity and a chance, however slim, at fortune. The alternative is a slow, grinding decay in a world that has already condemned you. And this is something historians still chew on. Was the golden age of piracy simply a crime wave fueled by greed? Or was it a desperate, violent social rebellion? Were these men just thieves, or were they renegades, creating their own floating republics in defiance of the oppressive empires of the day? The truth, as always, is probably somewhere in the murky middle. The man with the missing ear claps you on the shoulder. His grip is firm. He asks if you're in. You look around the grimy tavern one last time at the tired, hopeless faces. You think of the floggings, the stolen wages, the constant hunger. You give a slow, deliberate nod. The decision is made. You don't feel like a villain or a hero. You just feel a flicker of something that might be hope. A few hours later, you're in a small rowboat. The dark water of the harbor, the dark water of the harbor lapping against the hull. The creak of the oarlocks is the only sound as you move towards a dark, silhouetted sloop anchored in the bay. That ship is your new home, your new nation, your new fate. You're leaving the land behind, and with it, any illusion of a normal life. You don't know it yet, but you've just traded one kind of hunger for another, far more terrifying kind. But let's pause for a moment in that rowboat, letting the gentle rocking lull you. Before you made that fateful nod in the tavern, what exactly was the life you were so desperate to escape? Let's look at the menu you were served, courtesy of His Majesty's Royal Navy, or perhaps a penny-pinching merchant captain. Because to understand why you de-risk your neck for a pirate's life, you have to understand the corridor you were already in. On paper, the official rations didn't sound that bad. The Royal Navy, for instance, had a system. Each man was entitled to about a pound of biscuit and a gallon of beer per day. Then, on a rotating schedule, you did get servings of salted beef, salted pork, peas, and oatmeal. It sounds organized, almost nourishing. But the reality, as you know all too well, is a world away from the neat columns in a quartermaster's logbook. Let's start with your daily bread, the ship's biscuit, also known as hardtack. You don't chew it. You can't. It's a slab of flour, water, and a bit of salt, baked until it has the density and structural integrity of a brick. You've seen men break their teeth on it. The standard way to eat it is to soak it in whatever liquid you have, beer, water, a thin soup, until it softens into a sludge. You tap it on the table first, a ritual you learn it on your first day, to knock out the weevils and maggots that have inevitably made their home in its nooks and crannies. But you don't always get them all. You've learned it to eat in the dark when you can. Then there's the gallon of beer. A gallon. It sounds like a party. But this isn't the rich, hearty ale you might find on land. This is small beer, a weak, watery brew with just enough alcohol to kill some of the microbes that would otherwise be thriving in the water supply. It's a source of calories, and critically, it's safer to drink than the water itself, but it's often sour, flat, and tastes faintly of the barrel it's been sloshing around in for months. Still, it's better than the alternative. The main course is the salted meat. Salt horse, the men call it. It comes in huge barrels, packed in a thick crust of salt brine. When it's heaved onto the deck, it's a stiff, greyish-brown slab of something that was once beef or pork. The cook has to soak it for hours just to get enough salt out to make it remotely edible. Even then, it's tough as shoe leather. You saw it with your own eyes. A sailor once carved a piece of salt beef into a set of buttons for his coat, and they lasted longer than the coat did. Sometimes, when a barrel is opened, the stench tells you it's gone bad. A greenish or blackish tinge to the meat confirms it, but rations are rations. The cook will boil it anyway, hoping the heat kills the worst of it, and you'll be expected to eat it. This is where the ship's purser comes in. He's the man who manages the provisions. HES supposed to ensure every man gets his due, but the purser operates on a system of what was known as the purser's pound. The official pound was 16 ounces. The purser's pound that was often 14 ounces. He would systematically shortchange every man on his rations, selling the surplus for his own profit. When the shipmate there, it all added up. This little tidbit is something historians still discuss. How widespread was this corruption? Was it a case of a few bad apples? Or was the entire victualling system of the 18th century navies and merchant fleets built on a foundation of accepted, institutionalized theft from the common sailor? Your days are governed by this monotonous diet. Boiled salt meat, mushy peas cooked in water thick with grit, oatmeal gruel that tasty film, and the ever-present, brick-hard biscuit. You are constantly hungry, not just for more food, but for food that tastes like food. You dream of fresh fruit, a piece of bread that yields to your teeth, a sip of clean water. This diet doesn't just wear down your body, it grinds away at your soul. Physical reminder of your status. You are not a person to be nourished, you are a cog in a machine, fueled by the cheapest, most durable calories they can find. And when you weigh that daily reality against the wild, uncertain promises of the pirate life, the choice becomes terrifyingly clear. The rowboat grinds against the hull of the pirate sloop, a gentle thud that snaps you back to the present. A rope ladder is thrown down, and you scramble aboard, your heart a frantic drum against your ribs. The deck is surprisingly orderly, not the chaotic mess of a Hollywood set. Ropes are coiled, cannons are secured, and the mean and motley collection of faces from every corner of the Atlantic move with a quiet, practiced efficiency. This isn't a crew of drunken fools, this is a functioning predator. You are now among them, a brother of the coast, and it's time for your first real taste of the pirate life. This comes sooner than you think. A lookout cries out from the masthead, his voice sharp with excitement, sail ho. Instantly, the quiet purpose erupts into controlled action. The captain, the man with the missing ear you met in the tavern, barks a series of commands. You, as a new recruit, are mostly told to stay out of the way or help with the heavy, unskilled work of turning the ship to catch the wind. You watch as the Jolly Roger is hoisted ace, a white skull and crossbones on a black field. The sight sends a jolt through you, a mixture of fear and exhilaration. You've seen that flag from the other side. You're under it. The chase is on. The target is a merchant brig, heavy and slow in the water, probably laden with sugar or tobacco from the colonies. It's a cow, and you are the wolf cat. The chase doesn't last long. A few well-placed cannon shots across the brig's bow are enough. The merchant captain, seeing the black flag and the determined look of the ship bearing down on him, wisely chooses to surrender rather than have his vessel torn to splinters. Your sloop pulls alongside, grappling hooks are thrown, and your new comrades swarm over the railing with pistols and cutlasses in hand. There's shouting, a few moments of terrified pleading from the merchant crew, but no real fight. The takeover is swift, almost businesslike. And now the plunder. You watch as the pirate quartermaster, a man elected to ensure a fair division of all spoils, directs the search. Casks and crates are hoisted from the brig's hold onto your deck. But before they even look for coin or valuables, they go for the most important treasure of all, the provisions. The brig's cook is questioned, its water casks are inspected, and its food stores are raided with a desperate urgency. Gold is useless if you starve to death trying to spend it. Your first pirate feast is a chaotic, joyous affair on the deck of your ship as you sail away from the now looted brig. The mood is ecstatic. The merchant ship was well stocked. They've captured barrels of Madeira wine, sacks of flour, far finer than the gritty stuff used for hardtack, and the ultimate luxury, a coop of live chickens. The ship's cook, a one-legged man named Silas, who moves around his galley with surprising agility, is given the best of the haul. The smell of roasting chicken fills the air, a scent so foreign and wonderful it makes your stomach ache with anticipation. You're handed a tin plate, and it's piled high. A piece of roasted chicken, greasy and delicious. A scoop of what the men call the underfunker sort of crude, pudding made from crushed ship's biscuit, slush from the salt pork barrel, and molasses from the captured stores. It sounds disgusting, and it probably is, but right now, it tastes like heaven. Here's a little culinary oddity of the sea pirates were masters of improvisation. Recipes were passed down orally, and they had colorful names like this one. The underfunk was real, a testament to making something edible out of almost nothing. You wash it all down with a cup of the captured Madeira wine, smooth and sweet, a world away from the sour small beer you're used to. For the first time in months, you eat until you are truly full. The men around you are laughing, singing, and telling stories of past victories. In this moment, under the warm Caribbean sun, with a full belly and a cup of good wine, the choice you made in that tavern feels like the best decision of your life. The freedom is real. The camaraderie is real. But as you lean against the railing, watching the distant, empty brig fade into the horizon, a more sober thought might creep in. This feast is an anomaly. It's a prize won in a lottery. How long will these fresh provisions last? A week, two, and what will you be eating when the chickens are gone and the wine barrels are empty? The academic debate about pirate motivations often circles back to this. Was it the grand ideology of a floating republic that kept these men going, or was it the simple, animalistic cycle of feast and famine? Were they fighting for liberty, or were they just fighting for their next meal? You push the thought away for now. Tonight, you are a victor, and you are full. The glow of that first victory feast fades faster than a Caribbean sunset. The captured chickens are a distant, greasy memory. The fine Madeira wine is gone, the barrels tossed overboard, and the superior flour from the merchant ship has been baked and eaten. Life at sea settles into its relentless rhythm, and you are introduced to the true cornerstone of your new diet. It is your breakfast, your lunch, your midnight snack. It is the alpha and the omega of nautical nutrition. Meet your new best friend, hardtack. You've had ship's biscuit before, of course, on the naval and merchant vessels you so eagerly escaped. But now, it's different. There's no illusion of a varied diet rotating in and out. This is it. Day in, day out. The ship's hold contains barrels upon barrels of these things stacked high. They are your primary fuel source, the bedrock of your survival. The cook Silas will sometimes try to dress them up, but their fundamental nature is unchangeable. Let's take a closer look at one. You pick up a biscuit. It's a square or roundish slab, about half an inch thick and the size of your palm. It's pale, almost grey, and pockmarked with little holes. These aren't for decoration, they're docker holes, punched into the dough before baking to help it cook evenly, more importantly, dry out completely. The goal of hardtack is not flavor or texture, its goal is immortality. It is a food designed to outlast the sailor who eats it. Made from nothing more than flour, water, and maybe a little salt, it's baked multiple times until every last molecule of moisture has been exercised. The result is a foodstuff that is almost completely resistant to rot and mold, which is essential for long sea voyages. You try to bite into it directly, a rookie mistake you only make once. It's like biting a piece of lumber. You can feel the pressure in your jaw, the sickening feeling that your teeth are more likely to break than the biscuit is. No one bites hardtack. You have to smash it. You have to smash it. You take your biscuit and whack it against the ship's railing or use the butt of your pistol, breaking it into smaller, more manageable chunks. These chunks are then soaked. The most common method is to drop them into your daily ration of grog, or whatever watered-down spirit is on hand. The liquid slowly, grudgingly, seeps into the dense biscuit, softening it from a rock into a sort of chewy, flavorless paste. Sometimes Silas will make a stew a lobscouse by boiling chunks of hardtack with scraps of salted meat and whatever vegetables he might have, like onions or potatoes if you've been lucky enough to raid a ship recently. The biscuit dissolves, thickening the stew into a hearty, if bland, porridge. Here's a curious little fact about hardtack. Its name is a clue to its nature. Tack was British sailors' slang for food. So hardtack is literally hard food. It had other, less charitable names to ship's biscuit, sea bread, worm castles, mallow breakers, and perhaps most descriptively, dog biscuits. There's a historical debate that still surfaces from time to time about the precise recipes and baking method. Did different navies or different suppliers have slightly different techniques? Were some batches genuinely better than others? It seems a trivial point. But for the men whose entire existence depended on these flour bricks, a slightly less teeth-shattering biscuit would have been a matter of intense interest. You learn the subtle language of the biscuit. You can tell how old it is by its color and hardness. The fresh ones, from the top of the barrel, are merely rock hard. The older ones, from the bottom, have been sitting for months, or even years, and have achieved a level of petrification that is almost geological. Some of these biscuits were baked years ago, leftovers from a naval commission, sold as surplus to merchants, and then captured by you, traveling through time from one miserable vessel to another. You find yourself becoming obsessed with the state of the hardtack. Is it a good barrel or a bad one? This has nothing to do with taste, but with its inhabitants, which you are about to become intimately familiar with. As you sit there, about to dunk a piece into your tin cup, you notice a tiny blackhead peeking out from one of the docker holes. Your relationship with your daily bread is about to get a lot more complicated. You stare at the tiny black head, frozen for a second. Then, with a sigh of resignation, you do what you've seen the other men do. You turn the hardtack over and give it a firm, sharp rap on the wooden table. A few more taps and a small shower of wriggling, pale white larvae and black-headed weevils tumble out of the biscuit's air holes and onto the wood. Welcome to the protein portion of your meal. These are your constant dining companions, the uninvited guests who are, nonetheless, a fundamental part of the hard-tech experience. These are flower weevils, or more accurately, their larvae. The adult weevils lay their eggs in the flour before it's even baked, or find their way into the barrels in the ship's warm, dark hold. The eggs hatch, and the larvae, little white grubs, begin to eat the biscuit from the inside out. They are, in a very real sense, eating your food before you do. By the time a barrel has been at sea for a few months, it's not just a barrel of biscuits, it's a thriving, self-contained ecosystem. The men have a grim nickname for them: cadets, as in the junior officers you had to put up with in the Navy. The tapping ritual is second nature to the veteran sailors. They call it knocking the captain out of his cabin. They do it without thinking, a percussive beat before every meal. Tap, tap, tap. Brush the little creatures aside, or flick them overboard if you're near the rail, but you can never get them all. Many remain burrowed deep inside. So you are faced with a choice. You can try to pick them out, a futile and time-consuming effort, or you can adopt the preferred method of the experienced pirate: just eat them. An old salt sitting next to you grins, revealing a few lonely brown teeth. A bit of meat never hurt no one, lad, he rasps. That's flavor. This is the gallows humor of the sea. You learn that in the dim light below decks, or after the sun has set, you simply don't look too closely at what you're putting in your mouth. You break the biscuit, soak it, and eat the resulting mush, trying not to think about the texture. The weevils are soft, the adult beetles add a bit of a crunch. In a strange way, the old sailor is right. They are a source of protein and fat, however small and unappetizing. Here's a little known and frankly disgusting piece of trivia that culinary historians have pieced together. Some sailors believed that the more infested biscuits were actually preferable. Their reasoning: the weevils tunneling uneating had aerated the biscuit, making the dense, brick-like interior slightly softer and easier to break. They had, in effect, pre-chewed your food for you. You could have a hard, solid, weevil-free biscuit that might break your jaw, or a lively one that was riddled with tunnels and grubs, but was significantly easier to manage. Most chose the latter. You find yourself adapting. At first, the sight of the wriggling larvae made your stomach turn. Now, a few weeks later, you barely register it. It's just part of the process. Your disgust has been eroded by sheer repetitive hunger. You are recalibrated your definition of edible. The line has been redrawn. Weevils are on the edible side of that line. It's a psychological shift as much as a dietary one. The presence of weevils, however, points to a larger problem: decay. While the hardtack itself is resistant to mold, the presence of the insects means the biscuit is slowly being turned into dust. You'll occasionally pull out a piece that simply crumbles in your hand, its structural integrity completely compromised. It has become what the sailors call weevil dust. Historians have long debated the scale of this spoilage. How much of a ship's provisions were typically lost to infestation? Some accounts suggest it could be as high as a quarter or even a third of the biscuits on a long voyage. This wasn't just an inconvenience, it was a direct threat to survival, a countdown timer on your food supply. So use it there, chewing your gritty, lively porridge. You think back to your old life, complaining about a stale piece of bread on land. The irony is bitter. You chose this life for freedom, but you've become a slave to the contents of a flour barrel. You are in a constant, low-grade competition with a horde of tiny insects for your next meal. And as you swallow, you feel a slight crunch. You try not to think about it. You just chew, swallow, and survive. Your journey into the grim realities of a pirate's menu is well underway. The biscuits were just the beginning. The next thing you'll have to contend with is what you're washing them down with. Having choked down your weevil-laced biscuit, you're now incredibly thirsty. Your throat feels like sandpaper. You stumble over to the scuttlebutt, the large cask of fresh water kept on deck for the crew. A tin dipper is attached to it by a rope. You fill it and bring it to your lips, expecting relief. What you get is a mouthful of something lukewarm, thick, and profoundly foul. You force yourself to swallow, but your body almost rebels. This isn't water. Let's examine the life cycle of drinking water on an 18th century vessel. When you leave port, the water is fresh, clean, and wonderful. It's stored in a series of large wooden casks down in the hold. But the clock starts ticking immediately. Those casks are not perfectly sealed. They are made of wood, and wood breathes. It leaks. More importantly, it is organic. Within a few weeks at sea, especially in the sweltering heat of the Caribbean, a transformation begins. First, the water starts to taste of the barrel itself, a woody, tannic flavor that's unpleasant but bearable. Then, the slime starts. The inside of the casks becomes coated in a slick, greasy film. Algae begins to bloom, feeding on the sunlight that penetrates the deck and the nutrients in the water. You can see it when you look into the scuttlebot, a greenish, cloudy tinge. The water is no longer clear. It has a body to it. Sometimes, stringy green tendrils will be floating in the dipper. But it gets worse. Bacteria flourishes in this stagnant, warm environment. The water develops a smell, a pungent, sulfurous odor like rotten eggs that hits the back of your throat. The taste is indescribable, the combination of decay, bitterness, and stale vegetation. It's thick enough that you feel like you have to chew it. The men have a name for it: bilge water, even though it's not from the bilge of the ship. It's just that it smells like it should be. You watch as an older sailor fills his cup. He doesn't just drink it. He holds it up to his nose, sniffs, and then strains the water through his teeth as he drinks, catching any larger bits of green slime or the occasional drowned insect. This is a practiced skill. You try it yourself, and it helps, but only marginally. The taste is still there, coating your tongue and leaving a vile aftertaste that lingers for hours. This isn't just an unpleasant why, it's a constant source of sickness. Dysentery. What the sailors call the bloody flux is rampant on ships. It's debilitating and often fatal. And it comes directly from the water you are all forced to drink. Here's a bizarre little piece of maritime history that seems almost counterintuitive. Sometimes the water would get so bad that it would undergo a second purification. After weeks of being a green, stinking morass, the algae and bacteria would eventually die off, sink to the bottom of the cask, and the water on top would become clear and relatively odorless again. It was still teeming with invisible microbes, of course, but it was far more palatable. An experienced quartermaster knew to use the foulest casks first, hoping they would have time to turn and become drinkable again later in the voyage. It was a disgusting, high-stakes gamble with the crew's health. The quality of the water casks themselves is a subject of some historical debate. Were some types of wood, like cedar, genuinely better at preserving water than standard oak? There are anecdotal accounts that suggest so, but no definitive proof. Did charring the inside of the barrels, a technique used for aging whiskey, help? The historical record is fuzzy. For you on this ship, all you know is that the contents of these particular barrels are an affront to your senses. You are constantly dehydrated. You avoid drinking the water until you absolutely have to, until the thirst becomes a physical pain. But the hot sun and the hard work of sailing make that impossible to maintain. You have to drink. You have to drink. You have to swallow the green, slimy liquid and pray your stomach can handle it. This constant, low-level poisoning wears you down. It saps your strength and makes you susceptible to other diseases. You look out at the vast, endless blue of the ocean around you. You are surrounded by water, trillions of gallons of it. But you cannot drink a single drop. The irony is staggering. It's a special kind of hell. It's a special kind of hell. This desperation for something clean to drink created one of the most finest in naval history. The solution wasn't to find better water, it was to find a way to make the bad water drinkable. The answer, as you're about to discover, was already on board, sloshing around in barrels of its own. The answer was rum. The water is undrinkable, the crew is thirsty, and morale is plummeting. The quartermaster and captain know this is a dangerous combination. A thirsty, miserable crew is a mutinous crew. The solution is brought up from the hold a barrel of rum. But this isn't for a party. This isn't about getting drunk and singing sea shanties. This is a public health measure. This is the birth of Groll. You watch as the quartermaster stands by the scuttlebutt, the cask of foul green water. Next to him is a smaller keg of rum. With a ladle, he begins to mix them. The official Royal Navy recipe. established a few decades later by Admiral Edward Vernon, nicknamed Old Grog for the G-Rogrum cloak he often wore, was a precise ratio, 1 part from 2 for part water. On your pirate ship, the measurements are less scientific. The quartermaster eyeballs it, aiming for a mix that's strong enough to mask the taste of the putrid water, but not so strong that the crew becomes uselessly drunk. He hands you a cup of the new concoction. You eye it suspiciously. It's a cloudy, brownish liquid. You can still smell the faint, swampy odor of the water, but it's now overlaid with the sharp, sweet, alcoholic scent of the rum. You take a tentative sip. It's not good, but it is a profound improvement. The harshness of the alcohol cuts through the slime, and the sugary notes of the molasses-based spirit cover up the worst of the rotten egg taste. You can swallow this without gagging. You can drink a full cup and feel the blessed relief of hydration without your stomach churning in protest. This is the true purpose of grog. It wasn't invented for recreation. It was medicine. First and foremost, it made the disgusting water palatable. It was a chemical magic trick, transforming something undrinkable into something you could force down. Secondly, and just as importantly, the alcohol acted as a mild antiseptic. While the sailors of your time wouldn't have understood the concept of germs or bacteria, they knew from experience that men who drank grog were less likely to come down with the flux than those who drank the water straight. The alcohol was killing some of the microscopic monsters lurking in the water, making it safer to consume. A fascinating, and often overlooked, addition to this mixture was citrus juice. When available, lemon or lime juice would be added to the daily grog ration. The sailors of the time didn't know why it worked, but they observed that it helped ward off the dreaded disease of scurvy. This practice of adding lime juice is famously how British sailors got the nickname Limies. But for a pirate ship, a steady supply of limes or luxury you couldn't count on, so, for now, your grog is just the simple two-ingredient recipe: bad water and rum. The daily rum ration or tot becomes the highlight of your day. It's a ritual. At a set time, the crew lines up, and the quartermaster dispenses the grog. It provides a small amount of liquid, a burst of calories from the sugar in the rum, and a slight buzz that takes the edge off the misery of your existence. It's a moment of shared experience, a brief respite from the endless cycle of hard work and bad food. But it's a double-edged sword. While the captain needs the crew to be functional, the line between functional and drunk is a thin one on a ship full of armed men with little to do. This is why the rum was mixed with water in the first place, to control consumption. Handing out straight rum was seen as a recipe for disaster. Historians still debate the social dynamics of the rum ration. Was it a brilliant tool for maintaining morale and health, a way for officers to keep the men happy and compliant, or was it a form of chemical pacification, keeping the crew in a state of mild, constant inebriation to prevent them from thinking too hard about their grim circumstances on a pirate ship? It's a practical solution to a deadly problem, and a welcome escape. You finish your cup of grog, the warmth spreads through your chest. For a little while, you can forget about the weevils in your biscuit and the ache in your back. The world seems a slightly more hopeful place. You've solved the water problem for now. But as the brief alcoholic haze begins to fade, your stomach starts to rumble. You're still hungry. It's time to face the main course, pulled from the deepest, darkest, saltiest part of the ship's hold. With your thirst quenched by the questionable magic of grog, your attention now turns to the rumble in your stomach. It's time for the day's main meal. Silas, the one-legged cook, and his helper are wrestling a massive, heavy chunk of something out of a large barrel they've hoisted from the hold. The barrel is caked with a crust of dried salt, and as they pry the lid off, the air fills with a smell that is overwhelmingly, aggressively salty, with a faint, musty undertone of old meat. This is your dinner salt hot. The term covers both salted beef and salted pork, the primary sources of protein for any long sea voyage. The process of preserving it is brutal. Back on land, butchers would take cheap, tough cuts of meat, cut them into slabs, and dredge them in salt. Then they would be packed tightly into barrels with thick layers of coarse salt in between each piece, until the barrel was full. Finally, a supersaturated brine solution would be poured in to fill any remaining gaps. This massive amount of salt drew out the moisture from the meat, making it an inhospitable environment for the bacteria that cause decay. The result was a piece of meat that could, in theory, last for years. The piece they pull out of the barrel looks less like food and more like a reddish-brown piece of petrified wood. It's stiff, hard, and coated in a greasy, crystalline layer of salt. Your first task is to make it edible, which is a multi-hour process. The cook's mate hacks off a smaller piece with a cleaver, which takes a surprising amount of effort. This chunk is then tied to a rope and towed behind the ship for several hours, letting the ocean water wash away the thick outer layer of brine. After its bath, the meat is still incredibly salty. It has to be soaked in a tub of fresh water, your slimy green drinking water, for even more hours, with the water being changed periodically. Only after this long and tedious process can the cooking even begin. Silas will typically boil it, often for hours on end, in a large cauldron. The goal isn't just to cook it, but to continue leaching out the salt and, hopefully, to soften it up. You line up with your tin plate, and Silas slops a piece onto it. You stare at the grey, stringy mass. The boiling has done little to improve its texture. It's tough, fibrous, and requires a serious amount of chewing. Your jaw aches after a few bites. The flavor is overwhelmingly of salt, with a faint, ghostly memory of what might once have been beef or pork. It's a chore to eat, a caloric necessity rather than a pleasure. This is what you get on a good day. The real fun begins when you open a bad barrel. This is the salt meat lottery. Sometimes the preservation process wasn't perfect. A bit of air might have been trapped, or the brine solution wasn't quite strong enough. When the lid comes off a barrel like that, there's no mistaking it. The stench of rotten putrefaction billows out, a gag-inducing smell that can clear the deck. The meat inside will be discolored, showing patches of green or black. It will be slimy to the touch. By any sane standard, this meat should be thrown overboard immediately. But you are on a pirate ship hundreds of miles from the nearest port. Rations are finite. Throwing away a whole barrel of meat could be a death sentence later in the voyage, so a grim calculation is made. Can it be salvaged? Silas will examine the meat, cut away the worst-looking parts, and boil the rest for even longer than usual, often with a handful of peppercorns or other spices if you have them, to try and mask the taste of decay. You will be expected to eat it. You'll chew the leathery, slightly rotten meat, washing it down with grog, and try to convince yourself that the boiling killed whatever was wrong with it. Here's a stomach-turning piece of trivia for you. Sailors would sometimes take the oldest, hardest, most inedible pieces of salt horse and carve them into trinkets. They would polish them, carve designs into them, and create things like belt buckles or knife handles. The fact that a piece of food was hard enough to be used for woodworking tells you everything you need to know about its texture. The academic world still has questions about the victualling process of this era. How much of the meat was already of poor quality before it was even salted? Were suppliers for the Navy and merchant fleet spawning off diseased or semi-rotten meat? Knowing that the heavy salting would disguise its true nature, it's almost impossible to prove now. But a close reading of sailors' journals from the period reveals endless complaints about the salt horse, suggesting that the problem was systemic. You sit on the deck, gnawing on your piece of salted beef. It's a battle of attrition between your teeth and your dinner. You look at the other men, all doing the same, their faces set in grim determination. This is the fuel that runs the pirate engine. Not rum, not gold, but this barely edible, leathery, salty meat. It fills your stomach, but it starves your soul. And as you chew, and chew, you might notice that one of your teeth feels a little loose in its socket. You poke it with your tongue. It's just your imagination. It has to be. The place where all this culinary magic happens is the galley, your ship's kitchen. And it's probably not what you're picturing. Forget spacious, well-lit kitchens. The galley is a tiny, cramped, and incredibly hazardous space. It's usually located in the forecastle, the forward part of the ship, often crammed into a space not much bigger than a closet. At its heart is the stove, a brick and iron firebox, a heavy, solid structure designed to contain an open fire on a wooden ship. The whole setup is a terrifying fire risk, and everyone knows it. The floor around the stove is sheathed in metal or covered in sand, and buckets of water are always kept nearby. In rough weather or during a battle, the first order is always to douse the galley fire. Presiding over the smoky, greasy kingdom is the ship's cook. On a pirate vessel, the cook was often a man who cowled and performed the strenuous duties of a regular sailor. He might be older, or more commonly, he was someone who had been maimed in a previous battle. The pirate articles, the code you all live by, often specified compensation for injuries, a certain amount for a lost leg, a bit less for an arm, even a sum for an eye. As a result, your cook is very likely a man like Silas, missing a leg and getting by with a wooden peg. HES not chosen for his culinary genius, HES chosen because he can no longer climb the rigging or man a cannon. HES often referred to with a mixture of affection and pity as the doctor because he presides over the crew's gut. His job is a constant, thankless battle against decay. He is the master of taking the three terrible base ingredients: weevil-infested hardtack, slimy water, and leather-tough salt meat, and trying to turn them into something that won't cause a mutiny. He has a limited arsenal of tools: a few big cauldrons, some long-handled ladles, a cutting board stained with the ghosts of 1,000 meals, and a set of sharp knives that he guards jealously. You watch him work. His movements are economical and practiced in the cramped space. HES making today's main meal, which, like most days, is some form of stew. He starts by breaking up the hardtack, letting the weevils fall where they may. He boils the salt meat, tasting the water periodically to gauge its saltness. In the main cauldron, HES got a bubbling mess of water, biscuit chunks, and meat. If you've been lucky in your recent trades, he might add a handful of onions or some dried peas. If you've been really lucky, maybe a potato or two chopped into chunks. These vegetables are worth more than gold. They are flavor, they are nutrients, and they are a break from the monotony. One of the more peculiar assets a ship's cook had was the slush fund. This isn't what it sounds like today. Slush was the greasy, fatty scum that was skimmed off the top of the cauldron after boiling the salted meat. This fat was collected and stored in a barrel. It was a valuable commodity. It could be used for greasing the mast, waterproofing leather, or as a crude lamp oil. On many merchant or naval ships, the cook was allowed to sell this slush in port for his own personal profit, his slush fund. On your pirate ship, the rules are different. The slush belongs to the crew, more often than not. It goes right back into the food, adding calories and a greasy flavor to the stews, or used for frying if there's anything to fry. The academic debate here centers on the cook's actual role and status. Was he just a disabled sailor given a menial job, or was he a respected specialist whose skills were crucial for morale and survival? The evidence suggests it was the latter. A good cook who could make the inedible palatable was a vital member of the crew. His ability to manage the precious, limited resources could literally be the difference between life and death on a long voyage. He wasn't just a cook, he was a logistician and a magician. You see Silas reach for his most secret ingredient. It's a small, grimy pouch. From it, he takes a pinch of something dark and adds it to the stew. It might be a few peppercorns, a clove, or some other spice captured from a merchant ship. These spices are guarded more carefully than ammunition. They are the weapons in the war against blandness. Their job is to overpower the taste of salt, rot, and weevils, and to trick your tongue into thinking it's eating something delicious. The stew is ready. You get your portion, a grayish-brown sludge in your tin bowl. You can see the dissolved biscuit, the stringy meat, and if you're lucky, a chunk of onion. It doesn't look like much, but thanks to Silas's efforts, it's hot, it's filling, and it's a slight improvement over its component parts. As you eat, you gain a new respect for the one-legged man in his smoky, dangerous kitchen. HES not just feeding you, HES keeping you sane. While Silas's daily stews are the backbone of your diet, there's one particular dish that represents the pinnacle of pirate cuisine. It's a dish born of opportunity and desperation, a chaotic symphony of whatever is available. It's called salmon nudi. The name itself sounds strange and exotic, and for good reason. It's thought to derive from the French word samigodins, meaning a confused, heterogeneous mixture of things. That's the perfect description for it. A salmagnudi is not a recipe with fixed ingredients. It's a concept. It's what happens when the pirates have had a successful raid and decide to throw a proper feast using all their newfound, perishable treasures. It's a one-pot party. You and your crewmates gather around as Silas directs the preparations, a look of genuine creative joy on his face for once. Into the great cauldron goes a dizzying array of ingredients. The foundation is often a mix of cooked meats all chopped together. This could include some of your standard boiled salt beef, but also, gloriously, the roasted flesh of chickens or pigs taken from a captured ship. If you've recently made landfall on a Caribbean island, it might include the tender meat of a sea turtle, a prized delicacy. You watch as chunks of roasted fowl, cured ham, and boiled turtle meat are all tossed into the same pot. Next come the vegetables and fruits. Onions, garlic, and peppers form the aromatic base. Then anything and everything else goes in: chopped cabbage, pickled red cabbage if you have it, which gives the dish a vibrant splash of color, palm hearts, olives, grapes, even mangoes or pineapples if your raid was particularly fruitful. Each ingredient adds a layer of flavor and texture: the crunch of the cabbage, the salty burst of an olive, the sweetness of the fruit. Then come the starches and binders. Hard-boiled eggs are chopped up and thrown in. Anchovies or any other small, salted fish are added for a powerful umami kick. The whole mess is then dressed. A generous glug of olive oil, a splash of wine or vinegar to provide acidity, and a heavy-handed seasoning of pepper, mustard seed, and whatever other spices are on hand. Everything is tossed together, a vibrant, chaotic, colorful mess. It's served cold or at room temperature, piled high on plates. You take your first bite, and it's an explosion of sensations. It's salty, sweet, sour, savory, crunchy, and soft, all at once. After weeks of monotonous, single-note meals, the complexity of a salmagnudi is almost overwhelming to your palate. It's a celebration of abundance, a way of consuming all the best plunder before it has a chance to spoil. Here's a fun, quirky fact about this dish: salmagnudi was actually a popular dish on land as well, appearing in cookbooks in England 18th centuries. It was considered a fancy salad or appetizer. The pirates, many of whom came from humble backgrounds, essentially took this upper-class recipe and created their own crude, supersized, anything-goes version of it. They took a dish of the aristocracy and made it their own, which is a very pirate-like thing to do. Of course, there is an ongoing conversation among food historians about what a true pirate salmagnudi would have contained. The romantic version is a cornucopia of tropical delights. The more realistic version probably involved fewer pineapples and more pickled herring and onions. The truth likely varied wildly from one crew to another, depending entirely on what they had managed to steal that week. It was, by its very nature, an unpredictable and inconsistent dish. You and your crewmates devour the salmagnudi with gusto, washing it down with stolen wine or rum. This is the good life. This is the feast you dreamed of when you signed the articles. It's a moment of pure, unadulterated indulgence. But these moments are fleeting. They are the exception, not the rule. They are the peaks that make the long, deep valleys of your normal diets seem even more grim in comparison. As you scrape the last delicious morsels from your plate, you feel a familiar, dull ache in your gums. You chalk it up to the tough salt meat you were chewing on yesterday. You poke at a tooth with your tongue again. It definitely feels a bit loose. You try to ignore it. It's probably nothing. But deep down, a cold seed of dread begins to sprout. The feasts are wonderful, but the daily diet of preserved, lifeless food is starting to take a toll. Your body is keeping a tally of your nutritional debts, and sooner or later it's going to come to collect. The feast of salmagnudi is a fading, pleasant memory. The ship is back to its routine, and so are you. The days are a blur of blue sky, bluer water, and the greyish-brown reality of your food. The ache in your gums is no longer a fleeting sensation you can ignore. It's a constant dull throb. When you wake up in the morning, your mouth tastes foul, metallic. You run your tongue over your teeth, and the looseness you felt before is now undeniable. You can wiggle its light with your finger. Panic, cold and sharp, cuts through the morning haze. You try to eat your breakfast, a chunk of hardtack soaked in grog, but the simple act of chewing sends a jolt of pain through your jaw. The biscuit mush feels abrasive against your swollen, tender gums. They are a strange, deep purple color and bleed easily. Last night, you spit into your hand and saw it was pink with blood. You didn't want to believe it, but now, the evidence is unavoidable. You look at the man next to you, an older sailor named Thomas. You watch him eat. He doesn't chew with his front teeth. He mashes the soft biscuit against the roof of his mouth with his tongue, swallowing it down in soft lumps. You see him wince. You catch his eye, and he gives you a weary, knowing look. He knows exactly what you're going through. Later that day, while hauling on a rope, you feel a surge of exhaustion that seems all out of proportion to the task. Your limbs feel heavy, like they're filled with lead. Your joints ache. You have a bruise on your forearm from bumping into a cannon 2 days ago. Normally, it would be fading by now, but instead, it has grown larger, a dark, ugly splotch on your skin. It doesn't make sense. You try to rationalize it. Maybe it's the heat. Maybe you're just tired, but you've seen the signs in other men. You saw it in a young cabin boy a few months back. He started with the same complaints. Then he grew weak, unable to work. His legs swelled up, covered in dark blotches. His gums became so swollen, but wasting away in his hammock. At the time, you didn't understand. It was just one of the many ways a man could die at sea. Now you fear you are on the same path. This is the insidious onset of scurvy. It doesn't strike like a fever or a plague. It creeps in slowly, a thief in the night, stealing your vitality bit by bit. It starts with lethargy and sore joints, symptoms easily dismissed as the rigors of sailor life. But the true, undeniable sign is in your mouth. The decay of the gums, the loosening of the teeth. This is the calling card of the disease. Here's a small, chilling detail about scurvy that doctors of your time didn't understand, but which modern science has confirmed. The disease is caused by a lack of vitamin C. Vitamin C is essential for the body to produce collagen, the protein that is literally the glue that holds your body's tissues together. Without it, your body can't repair itself. Your capillaries become fragile and burst, causing the strange bruises. Your bones ache, and your gums, which are rich in collagen, start to break down. The teeth aren't just falling out, the very tissue that holds them in place is dissolving. The debate among naval historians and medical historians has long focused on why it took so long for the authorities to officially recognize the cure. James Lind, a naval surgeon, would famously conduct a clinical trial in 1747 proving that citrus fruits cured scurvy, but his findings were not implemented by the Royal Navy for almost 50 years. Why the delay? Was it bureaucratic inertia, a distrust of new ideas, or the simple logistical difficulty of supplying thousands of sailors with fresh fruit on long voyages? The answer is likely a combination of all three. But you are a pirate in 1717th. Lind's experiments are decades in your future. You don't know about vitamins or collagen. All you know is that your body is betraying you. You are caught in a web of sailor superstitions and folk remedies. Some men say you should drink seawater. Others recommend gargling with rum, or even your own urine. Some believe it's caused by bad air down in the hold. No one knows for sure, but everyone is terrified of it. You press your tongue against your loose tooth again. It gives more this time. The terror is no longer a seed, it's a cold, thorny vine wrapping around your heart. You have survived the Navy, you have survived the filth and the hunger, but this is a new kind of enemy. The single loose tooth was just the beginning. Now, weeks later, your entire mouth is a landscape of pain and decay. Several of your teeth are loose, wobbling in their sockets. Eating has become a torturous ordeal. You can no longer chew. You subsist on the softest parts of your rations, mashing biscuits, lodging tiny scraps of boiled meat with your tongue. Your gums are no longer just swollen and purple, they are black and spongy, emitting a foul, coppery odor of rot that you can taste with every breath. They have begun to swell so much that they are growing over your teeth, a horrifying process the men call the scurvy grouse. Soon, your teeth will be completely submerged in a bog of your own decaying flesh. But the horror of scurvy extends far beyond your mouth. The lethargy you first felt has deepened into a profound, bone-deep exhaustion. Climbing a single flight of stairs to the deck leaves you breathless, your heart hammering in your chest. Your joints have swelled, making every movement a grating, painful effort. Your skin is a roadmap of the disease. The small bruise on your arm has been joined by countless others. Dark purplish-black spots, called petechia, have erupted across your legs and arms, the result of spontaneous bleeding from the fragile capillaries just beneath your skin. Then comes one of the most terrifying and psychologically disturbing symptoms of all. You have a scar on your leg, a white puckered line from a cutlass wound you received years ago, long before you even became a pirate. It was a wound that had healed completely, a distant memory. One morning, you notice that the scar tissue is turning a dark, angry red. It's becoming tender to the touch. A few days later, the scar, a wound that has been closed for years, miraculously and horrificously reopens. The skin breaks apart, revealing the raw flesh beneath, as if the injury just happened. This is the ultimate betrayal of your body. Without vitamin C, the collagen holding that old scar tissue together has disintegrated. Your body is literally falling apart at the seams, unhealing itself. This phenomenon was widely reported by sailors and was one of the most dreaded aspects of the disease. It felt supernatural, a curse that could turn back time on your body's own repairs. You are not alone in your suffering. A significant portion of the crew is now in the grip of the disease. The ship has become a floating infirmary. Men lie listlessly in their hammocks, too weak to work. The air below decks is thick with the stench of sickness and decay. The healthy members of the crew, a dwindling number, have to work twice as hard to keep the ship sailing, their faces grim with the knowledge that they could be next. Here is a truly grim piece of medical history. In advanced stages of scurvy, the suffering was immense. Men were known to have their bones fracture from the slightest pressure. Their ligaments would soften. The cartilage connecting their ribs to their sternum could dissolve, causing the chest to cave in. And the end was often a sudden, unexpected death. A man who seemed merely weak and lethargic might suddenly die from a massive internal hemorrhage, a catastrophic failure of his circulatory system. The historical debate around scurvy is vast, but one of the most poignant questions is how the common sailor perceived it. Did they understand it as a single disease, or did they see it as a collection of separate, terrifying symptoms? The mouth rot, the leg sores, the great weakness without a unifying theory of nutrition. It must have seemed like they were being attacked by a host of different ailments at once, a hydra-headed monster consuming them from within. They didn't call themselves score, but I see the medical term. They would say a man had a touch of the scurvy, a deceptively mild phrase for such a devastating condition. You lie in your hammock, the ship rocking gently beneath you. You are in a feverish daze. You feel one of your front teeth finally give way completely. It doesn't fall out with a dramatic clatter. It just comes loose in the spongy mass of your gums. You spit it into your hand, a small, bloody piece of bone. It's a milestone of your decay. You have lost your first not to a brawl or an accident, but to a slow, inexorable rot caused by a diet of dead, preserved food, then netted drop to the floorboards. You are too weak to care. Your body is no longer your own. It belongs to the sea, to the ship, and to the relentless hunger of the disease that is eating you alive. Lying in your hammock, drifting in doubt of a feverish state, you overhear conversations. The men who are still healthy enough to talk are desperate. They debate remedies, sharing whispers and rumors of cures. One man swears by a poultice of boiled seaweed. Another insists that burying a man up to his neck in the sand of a warm beach can draw the sickness out. But one idea keeps coming up, a glimmer of hope in the superstitious fog-fresh fruit. Someone mentions a story they heard in a port about a Dutch ship that had a small garden on board growing greens. Someone else remembers a Spanish captain who always loaded his ship with crates of oranges and onions. The idea is there, floating just out of reach. If fresh food from the land is the cure, why isn't it common practice? Why are you all here, rotting from the inside out, when the solution seems so simple? The answer is a frustrating mix of ignorance, logistics, and the harsh realities of 18th century life. Firstly, while there was a growing body of anecdotal evidence, there was no scientific consensus. For every story about citrus fruit working, there was another story about it failing. No one understood the mechanism. They didn't know about vitamin C. They thought the benefit might come from the acidity of the fruit, which led them to try other acidic things, like vinegar or diluted sulfuric acid oil of vitriol, with disastrous results. Without knowing why it worked, the treatment seemed unreliable, like a folk remedy rather than a medical certainty. Secondly, there's a sheer logistical nightmare of it. Think about your ship. Where would you store hundreds of pounds of fresh fruit for a crew of 80 men on a voyage that could last for months or inches? Lemons and limes are not like hardtack. They bruise easily, they rot. In the warm, damp hold of your ship, a crate of fresh oranges would turn into a fuzzy green mound of penicillin in a matter of weeks. There was no way to preserve the freshness. This led to some bizarre and ultimately failed attempts at preservation. The Royal Navy in later years would try to create a concentrate, a rub of lemon, by boiling down the juice into a syrup. Unfortunately, the heating process they used destroyed most of the vitamin C, rendering the expensive syrup almost useless. They were so close, yet so far. This specific failure is a point of great fascination for historians, a perfect example of how a correct idea could be defeated by incorrect technology. So, for your pirate crew, the only way to get this life-saving medicine is to find it. This transformed your mission. You are no longer just hunting for ships laden with gold or silk. You are now desperately hunting for a patch of green on the horizon. The lookout isn't just scanning for the sails of a merchant vessel, he's scanning for the hazy, low-slung shape of an island. The captain and quartermaster are studying their crude charts, looking for any uncharted or uninhabited quay where you might make landfall. The mood on the ship shifts from predatory aggression to a desperate search for salvation. The hunt for plunder has been replaced by a hunt for a cure. Every day that passes without a successful find means more men are coming to the disease. Here's a little-known fact that highlights the desperation pirates and sailors would sometimes eat grass when they made landfall. They would crawl ashore and chew on whatever greens they could find, a primal, animalistic instinct driving them toward the color green, which they associated with life and health. They didn't know why, but they knew it sometimes helped. You lie in your hammock and listen to the lookout's calls. Every sail ho brings a flicker of hope. Maybe that ship has fresh supplies. Every land ho brings a surge of adrenaline. Will this be the place? Will it have the fruit, the greens, the turtles that can save you? The academic debate about pirate motivation, was it greed or freedom, seems utterly irrelevant right now. The primary motivation for every single man on this ship, from the captain down to the sickest boy, has been reduced to a single, urgent need to find a piece of fruit. You drift off into a fitful sleep, and you dream of oranges, not of eating them, but just of the color. A brilliant, vibrant orange, a color so full of life it hurts to look at. It's the color of health, the color of health, the color of everything you don't have. You wake up with the metallic taste of blood in your mouth. The dream fading, leaving only the grim reality of your floating prison. The search for land, for any land, has become the only thing that matters. The search for an island has failed. The charts were wrong, or the winds were against you. The horizon has been an endless, empty blue for weeks. The last of the drinkable grog is gone, and you're back to the slimy, foul-tasting water. But a far more terrifying reality is setting in. Silas the cook has made a stark announcement to the captain and quartermaster, and the news has spread through the ship like a fever. The last barrel of salt horse has been opened, and the biscuit barrels are nearly empty. The food is gone. This is a new stage of suffering beyond the filth. This is starvation. The meager rations you were receiving, the foul-tasting sludge you had come to depend on, are now being cut in half. And soon, they will disappear entirely. The gnawing hunger in your belly, once a dull ache, is now a sharp, twisting pain. It's a constant, visceral presence that eclipses even the pain of your rotting gums and aching joints. A profound, oppressive silence falls over the ship. There is no more singing, no more storytelling. The men move like ghosts, their faces hollow, their eyes wide and sunken. Every glance is a calculation. You look at your crewmates, men you fought alongside, and you see them not as brothers, but as competitors for the few remaining scraps of sustenance. The social fabric of the ship, the democratic brotherhood you signed up for, begins to unravel under the immense strain of true hunger. Your world shrinks. Your thoughts, once capable of dreams and plans, are now consumed by a single, obsessive-focused food. You find yourself staring at things you would never have considered before. The leather of the ship's rigging, the wood of the deck, the calloused skin on your own hands. Your mind, in its desperate state, begins to reclassify the world into two categories, edible and inedible. And that line is becoming dangerously blurry. You watch as a man, his mind half crazed with hunger, begins to gnaw on a strip of canvas he cut from a spare sail. He chews and chews, his jaw working endlessly, trying to extract some form of nourishment from the tough, tarred fibers. He knows it's useless, but the act of chewing is a comfort, a ghost of a meal. The ship itself starts to be cannibalized. The cook, in a desperate attempt to create something, anything, to put in the cauldron, boils down scraps of leather from old shoes and belts. The leather is scraped clean, boiled for hours until it softens into a gelatinous, foul-smelling glue. This is then mixed with whatever is left, biscuit dust, a few drops of slush, from the empty barrels to create a soup that is more of a psychological trick than a meal. It fills the belly, but it provides almost no nutrition. This practice of boiling leather is a well-documented survival tactic in historical accounts of sieges and naval disasters. It's the last resort before the ultimate taboos are broken. The historical debate here is a grim one. How common was this level of starvation? Was it a rare, catastrophic event, or was it a depressingly frequent reality for pirates on long, unlucky voyages? Given the unpredictable nature of piracy, the reliance on chance encounters for supplies, it's likely that many crews faced periods of extreme hunger, pushing them to the absolute limits of human endurance. A strange, quiet intensity develops among the crew. Fights break out over nothing, a misplaced look, a jostle in the narrow passageways. The pirate code, with its rules of order and democracy, feels like a fragile fiction from a distant, well-fed world. The captain and quartermaster struggle to maintain control, but their authority is eroding with every passing foodless day. They are starving too. You find yourself hiding in the shadows, conserving your energy, watching. Your senses become an avingum sharp. You can smell the faintest trace of anything that might be food. You can hear the slightest rustle in the dark corners of the hold. And it's that sound, that tiny, scrabbling sound in the darkness, that gives you a new, terrible idea. There is one source of meat left on this ship. It's small, it's fast, and it's usually considered vermin. But now, it looks like a feast. Your hunt is about to begin. The sound is a faint, frantic scratching from inside the wall of the hold. A month ago, it would have been an annoyance, a reminder of the filth and vermin that shared your living space. You would have cursed it. Now, in the dead quiet of the starving ship, it sounds like hope. It's the sound of life. Your body is weak, but your mind is suddenly sharp, honed to a predator's fine point by a hunger that has burned away all other thoughts. You are no longer just a sailor, a pirate, a brother of the coast. You are a hunter. You quietly slip out of your hammock, moving with a stealth you didn't know you possessed. You grab a small, heavy piece of firewood, a crude but effective cudgel. You creep down into the dark, stinking hold, your bare feet making no sound on the grimy planks. The air here is thick with the ghosts of spilled cargo, the memory of sugar, the phantom of tobacco, the dust of ancient flour. And under it all is the acrid, musty smell of your prey rats. For generations, they have lived alongside sailors, feasting on their scraps, growing fat in the shadows. They are a symbol of infestation and disease. But tonight, they are the most beautiful creatures you can imagine. You find a spot in the deepest shadows and you wait. Your body is still, conserving every precious calorie. Your eyes adjust to the gloom, and you see them, dark shapes flitting along the edges of the hold, their whiskers twitching, their beady eyes gleaming in the slivers of moonlight that pierce the darkness. They are not vermin. They are a moving larder, a mobile source of protein. Finally, once camp is close enough. It's large and sleek, grown bold by the lack of human activity. You don't think. You act. Your arm swings, bringing the cudgel down with a dull, sickening thud. The rat convulses for a moment, and then is still. Your heart is pounding, not with disgust, but with savage triumph. You snatch a triumph. You snatch it up, its body still warm, and scurry back to a hidden corner of the ship, clutching your prize to your chest like a bag of gold. This is not a unique act of desperation. In besieged cities, on famine-stricken ships, in the darkest chapters of human history, rats have always been the last resort on the menu. This is a mainstream historical fact, a grim footnote in the story of survival. You are simply taking your place in a long, miserable tradition. Here's a strange detail you might not have known on some truly desperate vessels. A market for rats would emerge. A strong, fast sailor who was a good rat catcher could provide for himself on even profit. A freshly caught rat could be sold to a weaker, sicker crewmate for a trinket, a future share of plunder, or a precious swig of watered-down rum. You could see it happening in the dark corners of the decade Esprit, whispered transaction for a piece of vermin that was now a luxury good. You find a secluded spot, shielded from the wind and the prying eyes of your crewmates. With your knife, you skin the rat, the process clumsy and gruesome. You build a tiny, smokeless fire from wood shavings and cook the small carcass on a skewer, turning it until the skin is crisp. The smell of roasting meat, however small, is intoxicating. You eat it with your bare hands, tearing the greasy, slightly sweetish flesh from the tiny bones. It's not much, just a few mouthfuls, but as the protein and fat hit your system, a wave of profound, life-affirming relief washes over you. It's the most delicious meal you have ever eaten. As you chew, you might unknowingly be participating in a debate that historians and zooarchaeologists still have. Which species of rat truly ruled the waves during your era? Was it the agile, climbing black rat Rattus rattus, the original ship rat that had spread across the world with the Romans, or was it the larger, more aggressive brown rat Rattus norvegicus, which was just beginning its global conquest around this time? The black rat was a better climber, likely living in the rigging and upper parts of the ship, while the brown rat preferred the sewers and holds. The specific species you're eating would determine its size and where you were most likely to find it. But to you, it is simply rat, and it is life. The small meal gives you a burst of energy, a clarity of thought you haven't felt in weeks. You have crossed another line. You have hunted and eaten vermin to survive. But as you suck the last morsel of meat from a tiny leg bone, you know this is not a sustainable solution. You are not the only one to have had this idea. Soon, the entire crew will be hunting, and the ship's rat population, once a nuisance, will be decimated. They will become as scarce as the biscuits. And when the last rat is gone, you will have to look for something else to chew. The rats are gone. The frantic, desperate hunt by the entire crew has changed to a silent, vermin-free tune. The brief respite offered by that small, stringy source of meat is over, and the gnawing hunger has returned with a vengeance. It's even worse now because you've had a taste of real food, a memory that tortures you in the deep, quiet hours of the night. Your body is screaming for sustenance, and your mind is starting to fray at the edges. You sit on the deck, your back against the mast, listlessly running your hand over the worn leather of your own shoe. It's old, cracked, and stiff with salt. An idea, born of sheer, animal desperation, takes root in your mind. It's the same logic that leads you to boil down leather scraps for soup, but now it's more personal, more immediate. Leather is just animal hide. Animal hide is, in a way, just a very, very tough form of meat. Perhaps there is some nourishment left in it. You take your knife, its edge dulled from use, and begin to saw a piece of your shoe. The work is slow and difficult. You cut away a small strip of the thickest part of the upper. You put it in on a piece of wood. It's hard, tasteless, and impregnated with the taste of tar, salt, and your own sweat. It's disgusting, but you are beyond disgust. You chew, and chew, and chew. your jaw aching, your mind fixated on the single-minded task of breaking down the fibers, of trying to trick your body into believing it is being fed. This isn't a sign of madness. This is a recorded, historical reality for people pushed to the brink of starvation. The most famous example comes from the ill-fated Donner Party, trapped in the Sierra Nevada mountains in the 1840s, who were documented to have boiled and eaten leather hides and moccasins to survive. But the practice is far older. Accounts from long naval voyages and military sieges across centuries mention men chewing on their belts, their harnesses, their scabbards, and their shoes. You look around the ship. You are not the only one. Other men are doing the same, silently gnawing on leather straps on the rawhide wrappings of the tiller, on any piece of treated animal skin they can get their hands on. There's no camaraderie in it. Each man is an island of misery, lost in his own private struggle to endure. The process evolves. You learn that simply chewing the raw leather is a waste of energy. The trick is to boil it for hours, just as Silas did with the scraps before. You and a few other men create a small, communal fire. You drop your leather strips into a pot of seawater. The leather softens, swells, and releases a small amount of gelatin. The resulting broth is thin, greasy, and tastes foul, but it is warm and it fills the belly. You fish out the softened leather and chew it. Pulpimas. It's still barely food, but it is something. Here's a peculiar and rather grim piece of material science that becomes relevant in your situation. The best leather to eat was the oldest. The traditional tanning process used in your era involved urine, animal brains, and dung, followed by treatment with oils and fats. Newer leather was tough and saturated with these unpleasant chemicals. But older leather, which had been exposed to the summons salt for years, had some of these compounds broken down. The collagen in the hide had begun to degrade, making it softer and easier to boil down into a gelatinous state. So ironically, the most worn-out, decrepit piece of leather on the ship was the most nutritious. The historical debate here is a quiet one, fought in the footnotes of academic papers. Did this practice actually provide any meaningful nutrition, or was it purely a psychological comfort? The consensus is that it offered a marginal, almost negligible amount of calories from the gelatin and fats. It was not enough to live on, but it might have been enough to postpone death by a few more days. To stay alive just one more day in the desperate hope that a sail or a patch of land would appear on the horizon. You swallow a mouthful of the leathery pulp. It's in your stomach like a rock. Your body, ravaged by scurvy and starvation, barely has the energy to digest it. But for a little while, the sharpest pains of hunger are dulled. You have consumed a piece of your own clothing. You have stripped away another layer of your humanity to feed the animal inside. You have no idea what you will eat tomorrow. There is almost nothing left. As you lean back, exhausted, a cry comes from the lookout at the top of the mast. It's not sail ho. It's a word you had almost given up on ever hearing again. A single croaked beautiful word, land. The word land acts like a jolt of lightning through the moribund crew. Men who were lying listlessly on the deck, too weak to move, stir themselves. They crawl to the railing, their eyes straining to see. And there it is, not a mirage, not a cloud bank, but a definite, solid-looking smudge of green and brown on the horizon. It's an island. Hope, a feeling you thought had died, surges through you with an almost painful intensity. The journey to the shore is agonizingly slow. The ship, manned by a skeleton crew of the few who still have some strength, limps towards the land. Every man is on deck, watching the island grow larger, their gaze fixed with a primal, desperate hunger. It's not a settlement, you can see that now. It's a small, uninhabited cay covered in scrubby trees and bracketed by whites and beaches. To a normal ship, it would be an inconvenience. To you, it is paradise. It is the Garden of Eden. The anchor drops in a shallow, turquoise bay. Before the captain can even give an order, men are throwing themselves overboard, not even waiting for the longboat. You are among them. You hit the water and the shock of its coolness is a blessed relief. You don't have the strength to swim properly, so you doggy paddle. You splash. You claw your way through the last few yards of water until your hands touch the coarse, wet sand of the beach. You drag yourself ashore, collapsing on the solid ground. The earth blessedly still after months of the sea's constant motion. For a few moments, you just lie there, letting the sun warm your face. Then the hunger reasserts itself. You and your crewmates, a gaunt and dragged band of scarecrows, begin to forage. You are not looking for treasure. You are not looking for anything edible. You tear at low-hanging leaves, stuffing them into your mouth. Some are bitter, some are tough, but they are green. Then you find them. The true treasure of the island. Tracks in the sand. Large, heavy tracks leading from the water up into the scrub. Sea turtles. A hunting party is formed, armed with hatchets and knives. They find a female turtle that has come ashore to lay her eggs. The slaughter is quick and brutal. The massive creature is flipped onto its back, helpless and dispatched. The men work with a feverish intensity, hacking the creature apart. Its rich, dark meat a sight that brings tears to your eyes. At the same time, another group finds the turtle's nest. They dig frantically in the sand, uncovering a clutch of dozens of leathery, round eggs. They are eaten on the spot raw. You crack one open and let the thick, salty yolk slide down your throat. It's the most nourishing thing you have ever tasted. The bounty doesn't stop there. The island is a rookery, home to thousands of seabirds. They are ridiculously easy to catch. Having never seen human predators, they barely move as you approach. You snatch them up, wringing their necks. Their eggs too are gathered by the handful. A great fire is built on the beach. The air, which for so long smelled only of rotten salt, is now filled with the glorious aroma of roasting turtle meat and birds. You are given a chunk of turtle steak, seared on the outside, bloody and rare on the inside. You tear at it with your teeth, the rich, oily meat sending waves of ecstasy through your starved body. You eat until your shrunken stomach can hold no more, and then you eat again. This is the other side of the pirate feast. It's not the celebratory samad made from stolen luxuries. This is a primal, desperate gorge, a feast of survival. Here's a small, curious detail about turtle meat that made it so valuable to sailors. Not only was it plentiful and easy to catch, but turtles could be kept alive on the ship's deck for weeks, on their backs, providing a source of fresh meat long after leaving the island. The historical reality of this is well documented. Pirates and privateers systematically used Caribbean and Atlantic islands as their personal larderests. Islands like the Caymans and the Galapagos were stripped of their turtle populations to feed passing ships. The debate among environmental historians is about the scale and impact of this predation. Was it a sustainable practice, or did the pirates of the Golden Age contribute to the decline of certain species for you in this moment? Such questions are meaningless. This turtle has saved your life. For a few days, the island is a haven. You do nothing but eat and sleep. The fresh meat, the eggs, and the wild greens you've been chewing on begin to work their magic. The terrible lethargy starts to lift. The color begins to return to your skin. The swelling in your gums, while still painful, seems to recede slightly. You are being brought back from the brink of death by the raw, untamed pantry of this small, anonymous island. You have been given a second chance. And with strength returning to your body, your thoughts once again turn back to the sea and to the ships that sail upon it. The island saved you, but it cannot sustain you. It was a temporary reprieve, a place to heal and regain strength. But you are pirates. Your lifeblood isn't turtle meat and bird eggs, it's plunder. The fresh meat has been cooked and eaten or salted away. The live turtles are now lumbering prisoners on your deck, and the crew's health, while improved, is still fragile. More importantly, the restless, predatory spirit of the crew has returned. It's time to go back to work. You set sail, leaving the small paradise behind. The ship feels different now. There's a renewed sense of purpose, but it's harder, more ruthless than before. Having stared into the abyss of starvation, the crew's motivations are now brutally simple. The hunt for gold, silver, and luxury goods is still there, of course. But the primary, overriding objective of any chase is now food. A ship's manifest of silver bars is abstract, a hold full of flour, salted pork, and barrels of wine is a matter of immediate visceral survival. A few days later, the cry comes from the lookout sail ho. This time the response is electric. Every man who can stand is on deck. You look out and see it, a large merchantman sitting low in the water. It's a tempting target, but it's also well armed. You can see the dark snouts of cannons along its side. A year ago, your captain might have been cautious, weighing the risks against the potential reward. Now, there is no debate. The men are clamoring for a fight, their eyes gleaming with a hunger that is for more than just gold. The captain gives the order to give chase. The battle is not a clean, swift victory like your first one. The merchant captain is not going to give up his cargo without a fight. He returns your warning shots with a full broadside. The air shatters with the roar of cannon fire. Wood splinters fly through the air like deadly projectiles. You huddle behind the ship's railing, the noise a physical blow to your ears. Your job is simple: stay alive and help reload the cannons. The work is hot, frantic, and terrifying. The two ships sail alongside each other, trading blows. The smoke from the cannons is thick and acrid, burning your eyes and throat. Men fall around you, struck by cannonballs or flying debris. But your crew fights with a terrifying ferocity. They are not just fighting for plunder, they are fighting the memory of gnawing hunger, of chewing on leather, of the slow death of scurvy. Every shot they fire is a roar of defiance against starvation. Finally, after what feels like an eternity, your ship maneuvers to ram the merchantman. Grappling hooks are thrown, and the order is given to board. You draw your cutlass, your hand trembling not just from fear, but from a surge of adrenaline. You swarm over the railing with your crewmates, screaming, a wave of desperate, ragged men. The merchant crew, outnumbered and demoralized, quickly surrenders. The ship is yours. But the first men over the side don't race for the captain's cabin to find his lockbox. They make a beeline for the galley in the ship's hold. The quartermaster and a handful of men secure the ship, while the rest of the crew descends upon the provisions like a pack of wolves. Here's a historical detail that's often lost in the romance of battle. The immediate aftermath of a successful capture was often chaotic and focused entirely on securing the most vital supplies. While the pirate officers were trying to control the situation, the average crewman's first instinct was to find food and water. This often led to what was called plundering the plunder before the official division could take place. You find yourself in the merchant ship's hold. It's a treasure trove. Barrels of biscuit, fresh, weevil-free biscuit. Casks of salted beef that look plump and well preserved. Sacks of onions, potatoes, and dried beans, and crates of wine. You crack open a barrel with your hatchet and stuff your pockets with hardtack, cramming a piece into your mouth right there in the dark. It tastes like the finest cake. The debate among historians about pirate violence often centers on whether they were bloodthirsty killers or pragmatic businessmen. The truth is, it depended on the situation. While they often tried to take ships without a fight to preserve the cargo and their own lives, when they were desperate, they could be incredibly violent. A crew that had recently survived starvation, like yours, was far more likely to fight to the death, because the alternative was a return to that living hell. Your desperation had made you formidable. You emerged from the hold, your arms full of stolen food, your face smeared with grease from a piece of salt pork you ate raw. The battle is over. You have not just secured your fortune, but more importantly, you have secured your survival for the next few months. You have fought for your next meal, and the victory is intoxicating. The victory is complete. The captured merchant ship, now under the command of a prize crew from your own ranks, sails alongside you. The immediate frantic scramble for food has subsided, replaced by a deep, collective sigh of relief. You are safe. You are fed. You are fed. You are, for the moment, rich. Now, it's time for the celebration. The decks of both ships are turned into one massive, chaotic banquet hall. The best of the captured provisions are brought out. Silas, your cook, is in his element, overseeing a cooking operation of epic proportions. The fires in the galleys burn hot and bright. The cauldrons bubble with rich stews, thickened not with biscuit dust, but with real flour and potatoes. On deck, makeshift spits are set up, roasting huge joints of the captured salt pork and beef after a quick soak to remove the worst of the salt. The smell is overwhelming, a thick, greasy, wonderful cloud that envelops the two ships. You are handed a plate piled higher than you've ever seen it. There's a chunk of roasted meat, a ladle full of thick peas porridge made with onions, a generous portion of boiled potatoes, and a whole, unbroken ship's biscuit to mop it all up. You find a spot on the deck and you don't just eat, you inhale. You gorge yourself, stuffing food into your mouth with your hands, barely chewing, driven by the ghost of starvation. The captured wine and rum flow freely. There is no rationing now. Casks are broached right there on the deck, and men dip their cups in at will. The rule about mixing rum with water to make grog is gleefully abandoned. You drink deeply of the strong, sweet rum, the alcohol hitting your malnourished system with a powerful, dizzying force. The mood is ecstatic, almost manic. Men are shouting, singing bawdy songs, and dancing clumsy jigs on the crowded deck. They are celebrating not just the victory, but their own survival. They are reveling in the sheer, overwhelming abundance. It's a violent pendulum swing from the absolute deprivation you endured just days ago, but this sudden, massive intake of rich, fatty food and strong alcohol has consequences. Your body, accustomed to starvation and a meager diet, is not prepared for this onslaught. Halfway through your second plate, your stomach cramps violently. You see other men around you suddenly go pale, clutching their bellies. Some stumble to the rail, retching, their bodies violently rejecting the very sustenance they craved. This phenomenon, known today as refeeding syndrome, is a dangerous medical condition, but for you, it's just a miserable physical reality. After weeks of dreaming of food, your own body betrays you when you finally get it. Here's a bizarre little medical fact from the period. Some ship surgeons and captains actually warned against this. They knew from experience that a starving crew, if allowed to feast without restraint, would make themselves incredibly sick. They would advise a gradual reintroduction of food-thin broths first, then small amounts of solid food. But on a pirate ship, in the chaotic aftermath of a battle, such discipline is impossible. The celebration is too wild, the hunger too primal. You manage to keep your meal down, but you feel bloated and sick. You switch from the food to the rum, hoping it will settle your stomach. The drunkenness on the ship escalates. Arguments break out, old grudges surface, fueled by the potent combination of alcohol and the adrenaline of recent battle. A fistfight erupts between two men over a stolen bottle of wine, and they have to be pulled apart by the quartermaster, who reminds them that the pirate code forbids fighting on board the ship. The historical perception of pirates is often one of perpetual drunkenness, but the reality was more complex. Was this kind of wild feast a common occurrence? Yes, but only after a successful raid. These were the blowouts, the release of immense pent-up tension and deprivation. It wasn't the daily norm. The debate among historians is whether this binge culture was a cause of their downfall or a necessary psychological coping mechanism for the extreme hardships they faced. You lean against the railing, your head spinning from the rum, your stomach churning from the food. The sun is setting, casting a golden glow over the scene of drunken chaos. You feel a strange sense of detachment. This is the victory you fought for, the feast you dreamed of. But it doesn't feel like the pure, simple joy you found on the island. This is something else. It's loud, it's violent, and it's sting with a self-destructive edge. As you watch one of your crewmates try to dance with a barrel, you realize that the hunger you feel isn't just for food. It's for something more, something that these wild, fleeting moments of excess can never truly satisfy. You take another swig of straight rum from the tin cup in your hand. The harsh, fiery liquid burns its way down your throat, a familiar and welcome sensation. In the midst of the chaotic celebration, the rum is a constant. It's the fuel for the party, the reward for the victory, the very spirit of the pirate life. Or so it seems. But as you look at the barrel, and at the men lining up to fill their cups, you start to see rum for what it really is on this ship: a tool, a medicine, and a crutch. This isn't the refined, aged rum you might find in a governor's mansion. The rum you drink is a raw, brutal spirit, freshly distilled and full of impurities. It's the byproduct of the sugar industry that dominates the Caribbean islands you haunt. When sugar cane is processed, it produces molasses, a thick, dark syrup. For the plantation owners, molasses was once a waste product. But someone discovered that you could ferment and distill it into a potent alcoholic beverage. It was cheap to make, powerful, and readily available. It was the perfect drink for the bottom rungs of society, for slaves, and for sailors. Its first and most important role on your ship, as you know all too well, is that of a water purifier. Mixed into grog, it makes the undrinkable drinkable. It's a chemical agent that masks the taste of rotten slime. This alone makes it more valuable than gold when you're weeks from land. Its second role is medicinal. Before a battle, a tot of rum is given to every man. They call it liquid courage, and it does take the edge off the terror of facing cannon fire. But it's also used after the fight. When a man is wounded, the surgeon, who is usually just the ship's carpenter or cook, will use rum for everything. He'll wash the wound with it, a crude but somewhat effective antiseptic. Then he'll give the man a large amount to drink, not just for the pain, but to get him more inclined drunk before a grisly procedure like an amputation. The rum is your only anesthetic, a blunt instrument to bring on oblivion before the soul goes to work. Here's a small, and often misunderstood, piece of pirate toast. To a short life and a merry one, is often seen as a devil-may-care romantic declaration. But in the context of your life, it's a deeply pragmatic statement. You know that your life expectancy is brutally short. You could be killed in battle, lost in a storm, die of disease, or hanged from a gallows. The rum is the merry part. It's a form of self-medication, a way to numb the constant physical pain, the psychological trauma, and the ever-present fear of a violent death. It helps you live with the knowledge that you will likely not see old age. But the rum is also a source of discipline and order. The quartermaster, not the captain, is in charge of dispensing the rum. This is a crucial part of the pirate code's balance of power. The daily ration is a right, but it is controlled. Giving one man an extra tot or denying another his share is a way to reward or punish behavior. Control the rum, and you control the crew. And you control the crew. Historians still debate the nuances of this power dynamic. Did the quartermaster's control over the rum make him, in some ways, more powerful than the elected captain in the day-to-day life of the ship? Finally, the rum is a currency. When you make port in a lawless haven like Nassau or Tortuga, your pockets might be empty of coin, but a barrel of stolen rum can buy you anything: a hot meal, a new pistol, a night of companionship. It is the liquid gold of the Caribbean. You look down into your cup. The dark liquid sloshes around. It's your courage, your anesthetic, your escape. But you've also seen what it does. You've seen men become violent, paranoid, and useless under its influence. You've seen it turn a disciplined crew into a drunken mob. It's a fickle friend. It solves so many of your problems: the bad water, the fear, the pain, while creating a host of new ones. It keeps you alive, but it also corrodes you from the inside out, just as surely as the scurvy. It's the lifeblood of your pirate world, but you realize now that it's also a sweet, slow-acting poison. You raise the cup to your lips and drain it anyway. In this life, you take your comfort where you can find it. The victory feast, with its chaotic mix of gluttony and sickness, eventually burns itself out. The hangovers are brutal, but the ship's hold is full, and for the first time in a long time, there's a sense of security. The captain sets a course not for another hunting ground, but for a different kind of sanctuary, a pirate haven. You're headed for Nassau, on the island of New Providence in the Bahamas. As you approach the port, the atmosphere on the ship changes. There's an air of anticipation of homecoming. Nassau isn't a proper colonial town. It's a sprawling, ramshackle republic of pirates, a place run by unformed men like you. There are no Royal Navy frigates in the harbor, no bewigged governors in stately mansions. There are only saloons, brothels, and merchants willing to buy stolen goods with no questions asked. It is, for a time, the epicenter of the pirate world. You sail into the shallow bay, past the wrecks of ships that serve as a crude breakwater. The town itself is a chaotic collection of wooden shacks, tents, and a few sturdy stone buildings, all clustered around the waterfront. The moment the anchor drops, the ship is swarmed by smaller boats. These are the bumboats, rowed by local merchants, prostitutes, and tavern owners, all eager to trade with a newly returned and plunder-rich crew. They offer fresh fruit, bread, jugs of ale, and promises of earthly delights ashore. You finally step onto solid ground, your legs wobbly after months at sea. The feeling is exhilarating. The first thing you do is find a tavern. It's a dark, smoky, noisy place, but it's full of life. And most importantly, it has fresh food. You hand over a few of the silver coins you received as your share of the plunder, and you are presented with a plate of fried fish, a loaf of soft bread, and a tankard of cool, fresh ale. After the privations of the sea, this simple meal feels like the most decadent luxury imaginable. There are no weevils, no slime, no salt horse. You eat slowly, savoring every single bite. This is what you fight for. This is what you risk your life for. For the next few weeks, you live a life of pure indulgence. Your share of the loot, which seemed like a fortune at sea, disappears with astonishing speed. You spend it on good food, on new clothes, on repairing your gear, and on the endless temptations that Nassau has to offer. You sleep in a real bed, in a room that doesn't rock back and forth. You drink water that comes from a well, not a slimy barrel. It's a brief, glorious return to a semblance of civilization, albeit all as one. Here's a small, interesting detail about the economy of a place like Nassau. It ran almost entirely on stolen goods. The merchants who operated here were known as fences. They would buy captured cargo sugar, tobacco, spices, cloth from pirate crews at a fraction of its market value. Then they would smuggle these goods to legitimate ports in the American colonies or even back to Europe, making a massive profit. These merchants were the essential, and often overlooked, partners in the pirate enterprise. Without them, the pirates' plunder would have been almost worthless. But even in this pirate paradise, the ghosts of your voyage haunt you. You catch your reflection in a piece of polished pewter. Your face is still gaunt. Your skin has a sallow, unhealthy pallor. And when you smile, the gaps in your teeth are a stark reminder of what you've been through. The fresh food is helping, but the damage is done. The scurvy might be in retreat, but the lost teeth will never grow back. Your body carries a permanent record of its suffering. The historical debate about these pirate havens like Nassau is whether they were truly libertarian utopias or just squalid finer society. A republic of pirates, as some scholars have called them, or were they simply temporary, parasitic communities that were doomed to collapse under their own weight of violence and disease? The truth is probably that they were both, at different times. Nassau was a place of unparalleled freedom for the common man of the sea, but it was a freedom that was chaotic, dangerous, and ultimately unsustainable. The money runs out, as it always does. The fresh food becomes a luxury you can no longer afford. The appeal of the taverns and the endless nights begins to fade, replaced by a familiar restlessness. You are a creature of the sea, and you've been on land for too long. Your ship is being careened on the beach, its hull scraped clean of barnacles and weeds and restocked. A new voyage is being planned. It's time to go back on the account. You have traded your gold for a full belly and a brief respite. Now you have to go out and earn it all over again. The cycle must continue. Back on the ship preparing to sail from Nassau, the reality of your pirate society reasserts itself. The lawless freedom of the port gives way to the structured democracy of your vessel. Before you hunt for new plunder, there's a crucial piece of business to attend to: the division of the old. The quartermaster calls a meeting on the main deck. He has his account book in hand. This is where the pirates' promise of a fair share is put to the test, and you're about to see that food and water are often treated with the same gravity as Spanish silver. The pirate code, the articles you all agreed to, is brought out and read aloud. Every crew has its own version, but they share common principles. The most important of these is the pay scale. The captain typically receives 2 shares of any plunder. The quartermaster, the ship's surgeon, the master gunner, and other key specialists might receive 1.5 or 1.25 shares. Every other man, from the oldest veteran to you, the still green recruit, receives 1 full share. Democratic pay structure is a radical departure from the Navy or merchant service, where officers and owners took the vast majority of the profits. But the articles govern more than just money. They govern the distribution of vital resources. The code is explicit: every man is entitled to an equal portion of fresh provisions and strong liquor. There is no special treatment for the captain. He eats the same weevil white biscuit and drinks the same slimy water as everyone else. This rule is fundamental to the pirate ethos. It's a direct rejection of the system where officers feasted in their cabins while the crew starved. You watch as the quartermaster oversees the final division of the captured goods you didn't already consume or trade. Sacks of flour, barrels of meat, casks of rum, it's all meticulously logged. This ensures that when rations are distributed at sea, every man knows he is getting his fair and equal due. This transparency is the glue that holds the crew together. It prevents the suspicion and resentment that festered on naval ships, where the purser's corruption was a constant source of anger. Here's a fascinating and often debated detail within pirate law: the concept of plunder. What was considered communal property to be divided, and what was personal generally. Anything of significant value found on a captured ship, coin, bullion, valuable cargo, weapons, and provisions was considered plunder. However, a crewman's personal effects, like his clothing or a sentimental trinket, were often considered his own. If a pirate stole from another crewmate, the punishment, according to many articles, was to be marooned on a deserted island. The sanctity of a man's share was paramount. This leads to a question that historians still puzzle over: how strictly were these codes actually enforced? Were they ironclad laws, or more like a set of guidelines that could be bent when necessary? The evidence suggests they were taken very seriously. The quartermaster's authority was real, and he acted as a sort of magistrate, settling disputes and ensuring the code was followed. A captain who tried to override the articles and take more than his share would find himself quickly voted out of his position, or worse. The code was just a piece of paper, it was the constitution of your floating republic. The distribution of food and water was especially critical. The articles often stipulated severe punishments for anyone found wasting fresh water or hoarding food. Every drop and every crumb was a shared resource, essential for the survival of the entire community. When you were starving, a stolen coin, it was a betrayal of the entire crew. As the meeting concludes, you receive your final small portion of coin from the Nassau dealings. It's not much, but it's yours. More importantly, you have witnessed the system in action. You have seen the quartermaster's careful accounting and the crew's silent, watchful approval. This system, this code, is the reason you joined this life. It's the promise that, win or lose, you will be treated as an equal. The gold is a bonus. The freedom is the real treasure. With the accounts settled and the hold freshly stocked, a new sense of purpose settles over the crew. You are no longer a collection of individuals recovering from a traumatic voyage. You are a single, unified entity again, bound by a shared hunger for whatever lies over the horizon. The lines are cast off, the sails are raised, and your ship points its bow back towards the open sea. The cycle of feast and famine, of risk and reward, begins anew. Years pass. The cycle becomes your life. You sail, you hunt, you fight. You endure long, hungry months of weevils and salt horse, punctuated by wild, glorious feasts after a successful capture. You visit pirate havens that boom and bust. You see men come and go, some get rich and disappear. Some die in battle. Some are lost to storms, some succumb to disease, and some end their days at the end of a rope. Through sheer luck and a growing, hard-won cunning, you survive, but survival has come at a price. Your body is a ledger, and every hardship has been meticulously recorded in scars and decay. One morning you look at your reflection in a bucket of calm seawater. The face that stares back at you is a stranger. It's the face of a man in his late 20s, but it looks 20 years older. The skin is weathered and leathery from constant exposure to the sun and salt spray. Your eyes are perpetually squinting, etched with deep lines at the corners. There are scars, a pale, jagged line across your cheek from a splinter in a long-forgotten battle, and a devote on your forehead where a pistol but once struck you. You open your mouth. The landscape inside is a ruin. You've lost more than half of your teeth. The ones that remain are brown and worn down to stumps. The constant cycle of scurvy, never fully cured, just beaten back temporarily by fresh food, has destroyed your gums and the bones of your jaw. Eating is a constant, low-grade challenge. You can no longer bite into anything hard. You live on soft foods, stews and mushes. The simple pleasure of biting into a crisp apple is a memory so distant it feels like it belongs to another person. Your body is a map of old injuries and chronic ailments. Your back is in a state of constant, dull protest from years of hauling ropes, lifting heavy objects, and sleeping on hard wooden decks. Your joints sneeze, elbows, shoulders ache with the damp, arthritic pain, especially when the weather is about to change. An old sword wound in your thigh has left you with a permanent limp. You are a collection of worn-out parts, poorly mended. Internally, things are no better. Years of drinking foul water, eating semi-rotten meat, and consuming vast quantities of raw, cheap rum have taken their toll on your digestive system. You suffer from chronic stomach pains and a host of other unpleasant, unmentionable ailments. Your liver, if you could see it, would be a scarred and unhappy organ. Here's a chilling piece of bioarchaeological evidence. When skeletons from 17th and 18th century mariners are unearthed, they tell this exact story. Archaeologists find bones riddled with the evidence of healed fractures, skulls showing signs of blunt trauma, and, most tellingly, jaws and teeth ravaged by severe periodontal disease, the unmistakable signature of chronic scurvy. The bones don't lie. They are a testament to a life of violence, malnutrition, and immense physical hardship. You had become a classic example of the old salt. The stereotype of the grizzled, limping, toothless pirate isn't just a caricature, it's an accurate depiction of a survivor. It's the physical manifestation of what this life costs. The historical question that arises is, did these men even notice in an era where life for the poor was brutal everywhere, and minor disabilities were common? Did they perceive their own physical decay as extraordinary, or was it just the expected outcome of a life lived hard? The answer is likely the latter. This was simply the price of doing business. You are no longer the naive young man who made a desperate choice in a tavern years ago. You are a hardened veteran, a predator of the sea. You are beholden to no king or master. You have a voice, a vote, and a share, but as you run your tongue over the empty, smooth spaces where your teeth used to be, you can't help but wonder about the cost. You've escaped the tyranny of the captain's lash, only to be subjected to the slower, more insidious tyranny of your own body's decay. You have survived, but every aching joint and every missing tooth is a reminder of what you have lost along the way. The years of survival have hardened you, but they have not prepared you for this. The ship is adrift. A storm has damaged your mast, and now a dead calm has settled over the ocean. You are motionless, a speck of wood on a vast, indifferent blue plate. The provisions from your last prize are long gone. The island turtles are a distant memory. The leather has been chewed, the rats are all dead. The crew is dying. Not in the heat of battle, but slowly, quietly, one by one in their hammocks. Scurvy and starvation have returned with a power you've never seen before. This morning a boy from Cork, no older than 17, breathed his last. He died of the flux, his body wasted away to nothing. His crewmates wrap his emaciated frame in a piece of sailcloth, weighting it with a cannonball. They are preparing to commit his body to the deep, the traditional burial at sea. But the preparations halt. An idea, unspoken but potent, hangs in the dead, hot air. It settles in the eyes of the men, a flicker of horrifying, pragmatic calculation. The ship is out of food, but here, wrapped in canvas, is a source of it. The captain, his own face a gaunt skull, calls the remaining crew to the deck. The quartermaster stands beside him. There is no debate, no argument. There is only a quiet, grim explanation of the custom of the sea. It's a dark tradition, a law without lawyers, spoken of in hushed tones by shipwrecked sailors and men pushed to the absolute brink. It is the last, most terrible resort. The custom has two forms. The first and most dreaded involves drawing lots. A man is chosen by chance to be sacrificed to feed the others. A short straw, a marked coin, fate decides who becomes the savior and who becomes the sinner. Thankfully, you are not there yet. You are at the second, slightly less damnable stage. The custom also dictates that if a man dies of natural causes, his body belongs to his starving shipmates. It is a gift, his final service to the crew. To bury him at sea would be to waste the only thing that can keep the rest of you alive. This is not a Hollywood invention. This is a grim documented reality of the age of sail. survival cannibalism was a known, if rarely practiced, part of maritime life. The historical and legal debate that still academic holds is a chilling one. Was the custom of the sea recognized, unwritten law that could absolve a man of murder in the eyes of his peers, or was it simply a post hoc justification for the ultimate taboo? A story told by survivors to lessen their guilt and escape the gallows, cases of shipwrecked crews who resorted to this worst in pamphlets and trial records, shocking the public on land. But for the men at sea, it was a terrifyingly logical extension of their brutal world. Silas, the cook, is tasked with the duty. He looks 100 years old. He moves with a slowness that has nothing to do with his wooden leg. There is no ceremony. There is no emotion. There is no emotion. There is only a quiet, methodical necessity. He does not call it by the boy's name. It is simply provision. A fire is lit, a stew is made. You are handed a bowl of the thin, greasy broth. Your stomach churns with a mixture of ravenous hunger and profound, soul deep revulsion. You look at the faces of your crewmates. There is no triumph, no relief. There is only a shared hollow-eyed shame. Every man is an island, trapped in his own internal horror. You lift the bowl to your lips. You close your eyes. You drink. The stew is warm. It is sustenance. It is calories. It is life. It stops the twisting pain in your gut. It pushes the blackness of starvation back for another day. But as the warmth spreads through your emaciated body, a coldness settles in your soul. You have survived, but the cost is absolute. You have consumed a comrade. You have crossed a line from which there is no return. A silence falls over the ship, heavier and more profound than the dead calm of the ocean. No one speaks. No one meets another's gaze. You have fed the animal inside you, but you may have killed the man. You now understand the final, terrible truth of this life. When all the gold is gone, when all the rules are broken, when all the hope is lost, the only thing left to eat is each other. A breeze soft as a ghost's sigh touches your cheek. It's the first real wind in weeks. The ship stirs, creaking like an old man waking from a long slumber. The dead calm is broken. You are saved. But as the sails begin to catch the wind and the ship slowly, painfully begins to move again, there is no cheer. There is only the heavy, oppressive silence of what you have done, of what you have all become. You have survived, but the cost has been etched onto your soul. Days later, you are finally rescued by a merchant vessel that takes pity on your wretched state. The journey back to a semblance of civilization is a blur. You are given clean water and thin, nourishing broth. Your body begins the slow, arduous process of healing, but your mind is a storm of its own. When you finally make it ashore, you find a room in a boarding house. For the first time in a very long time, you look into a real mirror, a piece of silvered glass that doesn't ripple and distort. The face that looks back is barely recognizable. It is the face of a survivor, gaunt, scarred, and haunted. And then you force a smile, or rather a grimace. And there, in the stark and forgiving light of the room, is the answer to the question that has, in a way, defined your entire journey. Why do you have no teeth? It wasn't one single thing. It was a perfect storm of misery, a confluence of hardships that targeted your mouth with relentless, systematic precision. The primary culprit, the great destroyer, was scurvy. You understand that now. It wasn't just a disease of the skin or the limbs, it was a disease of the very glue that held you together. It dissolved the collagen in your gums, turning them into a soft, spongy, rotten bog where your teeth could no longer find purchase. They didn't decay and fall out so much as they were simply let go, released from a body that could no longer hold on to them. But the scurvy didn't work alone. It had accomplices. Think of the hardtack. That brick-like, immortal biscuit you spent years of your life consuming. You've seen men break their teeth on a dry piece. The sheer, unrelenting hardness of your primary food source was a constant war of attrition against your enamel. Every meal was a risk, a gamble that the biscuit wouldn't win. Then there was the rest of your diet. The salt horse, tough and leathery as an old boot, required immense prolonged chewing that put incredible strain on your jaw and teeth. The complete lack of anything fresh for months on end meant your mouth was a sterile environment for health, but a fertile one for decay. And let's not forget the sheer violence of your life. A punch in a tavern brawl, a fall on a slippery deck, using your teeth to grip a rope or untie a stubborn knot. These were common, everyday occurrences that could chip, crack, or loosen a tooth long before the scurvy got to it. Here's the final, grim piece of the puzzle: the utter absence of care. In your entire time at sea, the concept of dental hygiene was non-existent. There were no toothbrushes, no powders, no dentists. An aching tooth was dealt with by either ignoring it, pulling it out with a pair of pliers if someone was brave enough, or numbing it with rum. This brings up a final, lingering question, one that academics who study the history of health still ponder. Was your condition exceptional, or were you simply an accelerated, extreme version of the norm for the poor and laboring classes of your time on land? A poor farmer or a city laborer also had a diet lacking in fresh vegetables, also had no access to dental care, and also faced a life of physical hardship. Their teeth also rotted and fell out. Your toothless grin, then, may not have been a uniquely pirate affliction. It was perhaps the common fate of the poor, made dramatically worse and faster by the unique, brutal, and vitamin-deprived environment of the sea. Your toothless smile, then, is not the jaunty, carefree grin of a romantic rogue. It's a survivor's emblem. It's a testament to every weevil-infested biscuit, every cup of slimy water, every piece of leathery meat. It's a permanent scar left by the slow, creeping horror of scurvy. It is the price you paid for your freedom. It is the answer, written in bone and decay, to the riddle of your pirate life. The ship sails on, but your part in its story is over now. The echoes of the cannon fire are fading, and the sharp taste of salt and drum dissolves into a distant memory. Your journey is done. Let the gentle rocking of that phantom bustle guide you now into a deeper, calmer current. Feel the weight of the day lift from your shoulders, like a heavy coat being slipped off. The hard deck beneath your back softens into your own bed, and the endless, dark ocean horizon pulls itself into the familiar, quiet darkness of your room. The creak of the ship's timbers is just the gentle hum of the fan, a soft, steady sound to carry you into your dreams. There are no more storms to weather, no more battles to fight. There is only this stillness, this peace. Take a slow breath in, and a long, quiet sigh out. Let the last of your thoughts drift away, like seabirds disappearing over the curve of the earth. You are safe in your harbor now. The end of the article. Good night.